Well, here's a question. Do you think that Hamas intentionally fights to induce civilian casualties?
Yeah, no.
Both parties do it.
Okay. So if you're not willing to admit that, you don't live in reality. Like, I don't know what to say.
No. How dare you resist our oppression of you?
October 7th was not resistance. That wasn't resistance. That was just like mass slaughter and rape of civilians. That was not resistance. What do you mean? October 7th was not a resistance attack.
I mean, this is absurd.
Zionism today means Jewish supremacy between the river and the sea. There is no other way to describe it.
Today, I'm hosting a debate about the war in Israel with host of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, social media personality Stephen Bonnell, otherwise known as Destiny, and journalist Gidon Levy. Cenk, let's start with you and talk about what's happening right now in Israel. So Israel have gone into Gaza. They said they've wiped out most of the battalions of Hamas. I think 19 out of 21 or 20 out of 21. They said most of what Hamas have. They've killed 2 former leaders. Is there any chance of peace?
Well, that's 100% dependent on the Israelis, because there's nothing left of Hamas. There's almost nothing left of the Palestinians. Over 43,500 people killed. There's 80% of the buildings destroyed in part, 90% of the population displaced. How much murder, mayhem, and slaughter is enough? And so the Palestinians and all of the Arab League is ready for a peace deal. In fact, Hamas said yes to a ceasefire deal that Israel proposed back in July. So the reason Israel is not going towards peace is because this was never about defending itself. It was always about land acquisition. So Smotrich, now cabinet minister, making it very clear and brazen, saying they're going to annex the West Bank and all of Judea and Samaria, which sounds like and is from the river to the sea. So this has always been a genocidal land acquisition. Now they're going into Syria, severe violations of their sovereignty. They're in southern Lebanon, more land, all while pretending to defend themselves. So if Israel wants a peace deal and a ceasefire, it could have it tomorrow, and everyone knows that. It's Israel that's being the warmongers, the aggressive colonial imperial empire that could tax every one of its neighbors, slaughters them, and then takes their land.
Don't you think they need to, as someone who's living right next to Hamas, who wants to kill them and wants to kill the whole of Israel?
No, nonsense. This is what every imperial empire does. We have a right to defend ourselves. Look, I just did a debate last night at UCLA about international law regarding this. And as I researched genocide after genocide, Srebrenica, the Armenian genocide, and a dozen others, it's always the same pattern. The aggressive empire that is occupying and colonizing says, oh, I can't believe they resisted our occupation. They're the terrorist, terrible people. We have to kill them all because we have a right to defend ourselves. And then they talk about land acquisition. They say, well, we need a little bit extra room to protect ourselves for security. And then we need more room, and we take more and more land. And every time, in every instance, they say, well, these no good insurgents, resistance, terrorists are hiding in their civilian population, so they made us kill all their civilians. As I explained last night about the Armenian genocide, where were they supposed to go, the Armenians that were resisting the Ottoman occupation? They were supposed to set up military barracks and go, hey, Ottomans, we're right here, come and kill us. That's not how any of these resistance movements work. The occupation is brutal. It is the cancer in the Middle East. It is what is causing all of the problems. And just in July, the Knesset voted 68-9. All 9 were the Arab parties. So every Jewish party in Israel voted, there will never be a Palestinian state. So what do you do with a brutal occupier that says, I will never allow you to exist? I will dehumanize you. I will kill you anytime I want. And now starving the people in northern Gaza. So what do you do with a brutal actor like this? I'm pushing for peace with everything I've got. But the reality is there's only one person or one group that could decide. This is Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and Smotrich. And they have shown 1,000 times over, they're not interested in peace. They're not interested in humanity. They're interested in land. And everything else is nothing but sheer propaganda.
So you mentioned that the Knesset said that they voted to never have a two-state solution. I was in Israel a couple of weeks ago, and I was in the Knesset, and they told me that they voted. One of the liberal Knesset members told me that they voted that there shouldn't be a two-state solution right now, not never.
Oh, okay. It's been 57 years. And by the way, good news. Hamas says in their charter Israel shouldn't exist. But for now, you never know. They might change their mind tomorrow. Because you know how many times we've heard that excuse? Oh, no, we have to kill all the Palestinians because Hamas, an extremist group that naturally arises in any occupation, moderates do not rise up to resist an occupation. Extremists do. And we've heard 1,000 times, they're not allowing Israel to exist. Israel already exists. What a preposterous thing. And they've already said publicly many years ago that they would take that away. Now, Israel says, no, I literally am not allowing the Palestinians to exist. And I voted to say they should never exist. But you never know. I could change my mind tomorrow. And really, Ellie, you know this. Do the liberals in Israel, and Gideon could answer this, do they have any power? No, they're totally 100% out of power. The right-wing lunatics are in charge. And unfortunately, and this is what breaks my heart, because I'm still crazy and naive enough to believe in Israel and to think that it could make a comeback, that it could turn into a country that we all love and brings, goodness in the world. But right now, it is on a super dark path. And there is no excuse for, I'm not going to allow you to exist. I'm going to occupy and enslave you for the rest of time. And I'm the good guys? And when you resist, I will murder so much of your population, it will shock the world. How is that in any way the good guys?
You mentioned, instead of talking about peace, let's talk about what's happening right now in Gaza. So, Cenk, I want to go to you and ask you about the war in Gaza. Do you think Israel should just unilaterally withdraw back into Israel from Gaza? What do you think should happen from here going forward?
Look, if you wanted peace, the answers are actually really simple. So you withdraw from Gaza, obviously. How much more can you destroy Gaza? And the idea of, taking more land for security is just obvious propaganda to do more colonial occupation and take more Palestinian land, more Arab land, etc. So withdraw. And Hamas already agreed to the July ceasefire. Do something along those lines. You could actually literally do that and be done with it. But that's not really going to solve the issue. The issue, that's going to at least stop the bleeding, literally, right? And they should definitely do that. But then you make a peace deal with the Palestinian Authority, give them the credibility to drive out Hamas from Gaza. But in order to do that, the only way that the Palestinian Authority would have that credibility is if they deliver on a Palestinian state. But unfortunately, Gideon's right. Not just Netanyahu, not just his monstrous cabinet filled with terrorists, but unfortunately, and this is the most heartbreaking part, the Israeli population doesn't want it. They want more land. They want to crush the Palestinians. They think the Palestinians are the Nazis, and they have PTSD from the Holocaust, and they're playing out some sort of, unfortunately, sick fantasy, like this time we're going to get them. But the Palestinians aren't the Nazis. In that analogy, they're the Jews. So the fact that the Jewish state is doing this is even more heartbreaking. So if you want peace, it's clear. You go to Abbas. Yeah, he's got problems. Yes, he's been a little bit obstinate before, but my God, would he love to retire as the hero that brought a Palestinian state. My God, would he love to drive out Gaza, who's his enemy, from Hamas out of Gaza, who that's his enemy. And so this is very doable. But I want to ask Gideon, because I came on mainly to talk to Gideon because he's such a hero in a lot of ways. Look, the culture now in Israel feels so right-wing, so pro-war, it seems nearly unbreakable. The only things that I can imagine is if there's some sort of traumatic event but the problem is that if it's more war, it just digs them into a more right-wing and more war hawk position, right? And if they have absolute power, it digs them into a more right-wing, more pro-war position because there's no downside. So it feels like an inescapable puzzle here. But the only thing I could imagine then is America cutting the funding and American Jews saying, no, we've had enough. This is terrible. And you have to turn around. Otherwise, we're not supporting you anymore. Would that begin to be enough of a jolt to the Israeli culture where they begin to rethink some things, or no?
So first of all, your observation is very right. it's not only about the right-wingers. It's also about the so-called peace camp in Israel. Not only totally vanished after the 7th of October, rightly so or not rightly so, I have my doubts how solid was it from the first place. Look at what's going on now in Gaza. There is opposition to Netanyahu, very vocal one, very devoted one. There is a protest against the government that doesn't release the hostages. And there is hardly any criticism about the crimes of war in Gaza. It's hardly being even covered in the Israeli media. It's actually not covered at all. Israelis don't want to know about it and don't care about it at all, including what used to be the peace camp. So my first problem is not the right-wingers, but the Zionist leftists, who are or the mainstream central left. They are not so different. They don't like the rhetoric of the right-wingers, but do you think they resist this war? Not at all. They support it. Do you think they resist the war in Lebanon? Not at all. They support it. So we are really facing, and to this I have to add one more thing, Cenk, and this is the younger generation. Unlikely most of the societies in the West, or at least as far as I know them, in Israel, the young generation is much more nationalistic, much more racist, much more conservative, and much more religious than the older one. So how can you see a change here? The change will come only from the outside. It's not guaranteed. First of all, we are facing now this lunatic administration. I don't know what to expect from the Americans. On one hand, Obama doesn't want wars, but all his nominations in foreign policy are those who will push Israel for war. Who will, for example, stop now Israel from settling in Gaza? The new Secretary of State, the lunatic ambassador in Tel Aviv. Who is going to stop Israel from settling in Gaza? Tomorrow they will come with an idea to settle in southern Lebanon. Why not? Who is going to stop them? This administration. Unless Donald Trump will surprise and say, guys, that's not my way, and I'm the one who decides I don't want a war there. And then he can make a difference, because Netanyahu, if there is someone that Netanyahu is afraid of, it is Donald Trump. He was never afraid of Joe Biden. He knew he can totally ignore all his condemnations and advices and warnings. He knew very well that this is a paper tiger that say one thing and does exactly the opposite. So, in a very ironic way, Donald Trump is the hope. Civil societies in the world are the hope. The civil societies in Europe who had enough. Maybe also, you mentioned rightly, parts of the Jewish community in the United States. Change will not come from within Israel. Forget about it.
Stephen, let's go to you, because you've been quite quiet. So if you want to respond to what Gideon says and also what Cenk said about Mahmoud Abbas being the main figurehead that can actually go forward.
Yeah, I mean, the Palestinian Authority needs to be empowered to some extent by the Israeli government. I mean, you need to have somebody that you negotiate with. You need to have somebody that represents a position that represents the Palestinian people. And without having that person or without having that entity being empowered to be that representative, you have nobody to argue with or nobody to negotiate with. The big issue, I mean, this is something I've been saying for a long time, and I think it's still just as true. And I think all of us agree on half of it. But then I'll say the other half that nobody will agree with is that right now, neither side is motivated to make any kind of real peace. If you were an Israeli, you'd be stupid to make peace. Nobody is telling you not to do whatever it is you want to do. They've had a lot of military success over the past few months. They're going to continue to shore up their demographic majorities in parts of Area C. They're going to continue to annex parts of it. And that's just, why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't you do that if you were an Israeli and you wanted more and more territory? If you were Palestinian, why would you accept any deal that Israel would ever offer you when the ICC is asking for arrest warrants for Netanyahu, when the ICJ might declare that Israel is a genocidal country, when other people are saying that Israel is an apartheid occupying nation? Why would you ever make a deal with somebody that's so evil? So I think everybody right now is just kind of being pushed to the brink by all of the kind of conditions that are set up, a lot of them kind of pushed internationally. And until that changes, until somebody goes in and they basically say like, hey, Palestinians, you guys have 2 weeks to make a deal or we're cutting off all your foreign aid. Hey, Israel, you guys have 2 weeks to make a deal or we're cutting off all your military support. Like there has to be like a pressure created on the ground where people are like, okay, well, we have to actually figure out like what we're going to do now, because now like stuff is going to get really bad if we don't. And until that pressure exists, I mean, both sides are basically incentivized to carry on fighting with each other forever.
Oh, well, and do you think that can happen now? And do you think so? When that is that should Israel immediately get out the right now, even before that happens? Should Israel already get out their troops in Gaza? You don't like right now. It's not such an issue.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that the long term that Israel is playing a dangerous game. They have been. That concept started by Menachem Begin, the capsule theory, that we can just negotiate with every single person except for the Palestinians, and maybe sometime in the future they'll disappear or whatever. I guess go up in smoke. That's a stupid idea, and it's a dangerous game that's probably taking everybody in that region off a cliff. So I think for the long term health of the country, they should do something, but. I mean, my understanding is now, I haven't checked for a few days, but I think Netanyahu is popular again, or maybe it was like 47% popularity in that country. The thing is that like, it's just been such a string of, especially loaded at the end here, a lot of military success. For Hamas, they got Haniyeh, they got Mohammed Deif, they got Sinwar, they got all three of the top dudes. And then for Hezbollah, the pager attack worked really well. They killed Nasrallah, who they'd spent so much time going after. So I mean, after such a string of military successes, after basically smacking off 2 Iranian separate strikes, I mean, you got to be feeling good militarily in the position that Israel's in. And then Trump is elected, who is basically a sycophant for whatever's popular, and Israel's popular with older people in the U.S. So yeah, I don't know where that pressure is going to come from right now to tell Israel to like, hey, slow down, because it seems like they've been rewarded for everything they've done over the past year, basically. On a short term, I mean, I would say if you're looking at it short-sightedly, I think that's what the appearance would be in Israel. Okay,
and then I also just want to ask you, Stephen, one more question, then we'll go elsewhere. So Gideon made the point saying, let's not focus on peace. Let's focus on right now what's happening in Gaza. Do you think there's a genocide happening right now in Gaza?
No, but that's a whole other. I'm not. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So what is it?
It's a war. What do you mean?
42,000 civilians being killed, 20,000 of them women and children. That's the way war goes.
I mean, sometimes it is, especially when the other. Well, here's a question: do you think that Hamas intentionally fights to induce civilian casualties?
Yeah, no.
Both parties do it.
Okay, so if you're not willing to admit that, you don't live in reality. Like, I don't know what to say.
No,
it's not. Yeah.
So I can answer it. So listen, this whole thing of let's call the insurgents terrorists, and that allows us to not only kill anyone resisting our occupation, but any civilian that's near them, which in Gaza is all the civilians, is just an excuse for further occupation. So I'm not in favor of Hamas. I'm not in favor of killing civilians. I think it's terrible. I think it's a stupid strategy on top of an immoral strategy. But we're all pretending like that it's not an insurgency. Of course it's an insurgency. That's what any people that have been occupied throughout all of history have at some point fought back. And did they fight back with flowers and roses and cupcakes? No, they fight back usually violently. And when that happens, the occupying power says, great, now I'm justified in hating you more, occupying you more, oppressing and humiliating you more. And because now you're the bad guy because you dared to fight back against me. Don't you know your role? I mean, yesterday in the debate, I'm dealing with an Israeli representative basically saying that, well, no, since they don't love us, they have indoctrinated, and happens in almost every debate, they've indoctrinated their children to not like Jews. What a preposterous argument. Were the Armenians supposed to indoctrinate their kids to love the Turks? and that would be our prerequisite for letting the Armenians go? No, first, even though we've occupied you for hundreds of years and oppressed and humiliated you and killed you ad nauseum, our precondition for peace and for ending the occupation is Not only do you not have to hate us, but you have to love us first. That's absurd. Utterly, utterly absurd. And it's an impossible standard meant to prevent peace. So that's super obvious. I want to ask Destiny a question. So when they go to get the land, are you still going to claim it was to defend themselves? Or when they go to get the land acquisition, it has now become clear that this was never about defense. This was about offense. And it was all about stealing Arab land.
So I think it's a reductionist way to look at it. I think that the way that the history of Israel has worked is, I think Israel has, for the most part, said there are political realities on the ground, and we will confine ourselves to the areas that we must. But if you give us the opportunity to, we will take whatever we can from you. I think that's been the dual position that Israel has inhabited historically. So there was a time where after 48, Israel was like, okay, well, this is it. And as they approached 67, they're like, this is the land we have. And like, please, like, don't fight. We're just whatever. Don't attack us. Like, we're good. We have no security guarantees from the West. Everyone around us is really mad. But a war happens and they managed to get a lot of land from it. And I think that that's just like the history of Israel. So I still would maintain the position that taking territory in Gaza is stupid. I don't think that they would. Is it possible some permanent security apparatus might remain there? Maybe, but like moving settlements and everything back in, I still don't think that would happen. But I mean, if it did happen, it wouldn't change anything prior to this, which is like the war doesn't become retroactively unjustified. The issue is still that there is an opposite side to Israel that is constantly giving it legitimate reason for war and then creating the opportunities for land seizure afterwards.
Reason for war. How dare you resist our oppression of you?
October 7th was not resistance. That wasn't resistance. That was just like mass slaughter and rape of civilians. That was not resistance. What do you mean? October 7th was not a resistance attack.
I mean, this is absurd. The African National Congress originally killed civilians. Again, it's a counterproductive.
The ANC explicitly had a policy of not trying to kill civilians. They literally explicitly had a policy of targeting government infrastructure. They did for a while, and then they changed it because Mandela was like, hey, this is probably not a good idea. This is kind of making us look horrible, and now nobody's going to be on our side. Yeah.
But as Gideon, the Palestinians went to the UN, right? You couldn't ask for a more peaceful solution. And Israel said, no, this is terrible. How dare they try diplomacy? Diplomacy is terrorism. So
the UN,
they've tried everything. They've tried everything. And every time they try peace, nobody ever covers it. The propagandists in American media go, no, the Palestinians are always guilty. My whole life growing up Muslim here in America, every piece of media was Muslims are terrible. Muslims are savages. Muslims are terrorists. Muslims are dark and backwards. I'm sick of it. So the people who are guilty in this case is not the Muslims, is not the Palestinians. They are David. They are being crushed. And Goliath is guilty. And it is obvious. And the fact that Israel can't see that they are monstrous Goliath at this point is, again, it's heartbreaking because I don't want them to be that. So look, I'm bringing it back to Gideon. The only thing I can imagine, you're right, brother, when you say outside pressure is the only thing that could possibly work. Cutting the funding from America, maybe that could happen under Trump. But that's, again, a very small hope given that he's given Miriam Adelson everything that she wants, and our current position is Israel first. But another possibility is an worldwide economic boycott. I mean, aren't we definitely at that point? No one buy Israeli products. Obviously, you'd be crazy to go to Israel. I mean, there's a lawless nation. I mean, if you're Muslim, they would just kill you. They kill Muslim American journalists. They kill Muslim Americans, sniper shots. So it's a murderous state. So obviously nobody should go to Israel and no one should buy Israeli products. And the economic boycott should be so thorough. There should be such a pariah that it creates leverage and that they feel pain, but not physical, not killing people, but economic pain enough to turn around.
If you look at the Cenk and Gideon have been saying, an Israeli boycott, I mean, not talking about Iran, but Israeli boycott, what's your thoughts on that?
I don't think it'll do much. I mean, like, if you want to have this idea of, well, we're going to start treating Israel like they treat the Palestinians, then Israel would simply say, okay, well, we're just going to start acting like the Palestinians. And the first people that are going to go back on your boycott are going to be Jordan and Egypt. because they're going to say, well, hold on. We don't want to feel like we are living next to somebody who feels like they can attack us with impunity, bomb us with impunity, kill all of our civilians with impunity. Like, for real, not the, like, they do the bombing and some people are killed after leaflets and warnings or whatever, but like, we're going to go in and just like murder as many civilians as we possibly can, which is how Hamas acts when they have the ability to operate. They kill as many people as they can. So
You mean like Israel's doing now?
do you think that Israel right now is killing as many people as they can?
So this is the same argument I used to make when I used to defend the Armenian genocide. Well, we didn't kill them all. Well, there were the Armenians.
I never said that. I'm asking a very simple question. Do you think Israel is killing as many civilians as they can right now?
I think they're killing as many civilians as they think is palatable.
Do you think that when Hamas does attacks, do you think Hamas thinks we can only kill as many as is palatable?
Well, they only have a limited amount of power. So look,
exactly. So are they killing as many as they can, or
Destiny? This is a power dynamic. This isn't about.
No, you can't use power dynamic to try to explain away every abhorrent action. This is exactly why Jewish people don't trust the rest of the world when people say things like it's a power dynamic. So that's why we can't help, or we can't say, or we can't do anything. And it's like, okay, because Israel says we're a power dynamic. We're however many 10 million Jews against 20 billion Arabs. Like, it's a power dynamic, right? It's the same argument.
You sound exactly like the Ottoman Empire. Well, the Armenians are killing civilians and they don't have any bounds. So why should we have any bounds? Well, because you're the Ottoman Empire and you could easily kill them all. And in fact, you did. You killed a lot of them. And then their excuse was, well, they were killing us and they had no restraint. So we had no restraint. But brother, you have all the power and they have none of the power. That's why you killed so many of them. And then they said the same exact thing you're saying today. Well, we didn't kill them all.
I've never said they didn't kill them all. I'm saying that Israel clearly restrains themselves. That's very obvious. I don't believe that Hamas restrains themselves. I think that's pretty obvious. So the idea of treating Israel like they treat the Palestinians is just kind of, I just don't think it's realistic. I think Israel would, if they felt like they had literally nothing to gain by acting within any kind of international norm, I think that the deaths and the ethnic cleansings and the explosions would be 500 million times worse. It would be on a whole other level of.
You have ironically, you have a much darker view of the Israelis than I do. So, I mean, you think if they are treated with equality and justice, that they will strike out and kill everyone around them. I hope not. I hope.
That is the language of the Middle East, right? And has been for
don't blame the Muslims for this. It's not the language of the Middle East.
Who said anything about Muslims?
The language of Israel.
Hold on, Turkey are Turkish people. Okay, Persians in Iran. You have Muslims and Arabs as well. You have Israelis and Jews. Like, it's not just one people. The language of the Middle East has been a language of. Hold on, I'm sorry. Wait, do you think there were like all the caliphates were accomplished by conquest? All of the Middle East over the past 100 years has been embroiled in bitter war with each other, whether from Pakistan to Iran, Iraq, to Yemen, to North Africa. I mean, like, are we denying that? Or
so look, what you're doing is you're conflating two different things. Throughout the history of the world, everybody did conquest, they did slaughters, the Mongols did it, the Europeans did it, the caliphates did it, everyone did it. Okay, so it was universal. So that's the past. Then after World War II, we enter the modern era. And in the modern era, there's this image of, oh my God, the Middle East is it's in so much turmoil. There's so much violence. Oh, they're so irredeemable, right? No.
Wait, I didn't say anything about irredeemable. And it is insane for you to say that after World War II, everything was just peachy. That is absolutely not true. Iraq-Iran war happened. Saddam Hussein happened. The Kuwait invasion happened. The Yemen civil wars has happened. The Syrian civil wars. The idea that it's been just peachy after World War II is completely detached from reality.
Peachy, but what you're trying to get into people's heads is, don't worry about the Middle East. Bunch of violent people always killing each other. No, Europe is 10,000 times more violent, if we're being honest.
I know that first of all, I don't even think I would necessarily
white Christians, but Europe is by far the most violent continent in the history of the world by a landslide. But in American media, Middle East dark and violent. Oh, Europe enlightened and Western civilization. It's propaganda to make you think, oh, the Muslims are violent. They had it coming.
Yeah, you're fighting against ghosts here. I'm an American, okay? I don't like Europe. All right. I'm not here to defend European history. I'm just saying that in the Middle East, your civilization is what you can make it. Your borders are what you can carve in blood. That's essentially how people have conducted themselves there, Israelis included, and that seems to be the only language that anybody can hear or anybody can respect. So that's how people there, Israelis included, will continue to conduct themselves. That's all I'm saying. That's the expectation.
No, Israel and Egypt did a peace deal. It worked great.
After what? After Israel saw itself on the brink of annihilation in 73 from territory that they conquered in 67.
The idea that the Middle East will always be at war is totally wrong.
I never said it would always be at war. There are paths for it to not be at war. I think it's possible. I think that the 2 million Arab Palestinians that live in Israel are proof of that people can live together side by side in peace and in harmony. It's definitely possible. I don't think it's impossible, but
I think the great majority of the wars in the Middle East were started by Israel and America. And then we blame the local populations for us killing them. They had it coming. The Middle East is irredeemable. They're always violent. And so we had to kill them and we had to invade them. Iraq didn't invade us. We invaded Iraq. And by the way, why the hell did we invade Iraq? They didn't even do 9/11 at all.
Well, the first time it was because
to realize, oh, wait a minute. Who was in favor of attacking Iraq? Oh, right, Netanyahu. Huh, funny how that worked out.
Wait, why wasn't Netanyahu in favor of attacking Iraq?
He was a neocon that was 100% clear. They wanted to attack 7 Arab nations. And
I think Netanyahu wanted to attack Iraq because in the first Gulf War, Saddam Hussein was firing off Scud missiles at Israel. I think Netanyahu, Israel, had good reason not to like Iraq.
So you're admitting it. America did that monstrous, horrible war in Iraq in favor of Netanyahu and Israel.
The first or second
Second
Gulf?
one.
Oh, actually, the first one. Netanyahu was 95. I don't remember the first time he came in. But I'm just saying that there's good reason for the first Gulf War for Iraq. The second one, obviously, stupid.
I agree with
I'm not going to sit here and defend that. But there's been plenty of other conflicts. Yemen has been embroiled in conflict for a century. The Iraq-Iran war was a massive conflict between the two countries. I think over 1 million people died. The whole Syrian civil war has been a massive conflict. The Soviets invading Afghanistan. It's just all sorts of
Okay, so Gideon, do you want to say something last because you haven't said anything for a few minutes, and then we'll finish up, and that'll be the last thing.
No, I enjoyed every minute, and we see that the more we talk, the more issues are coming up. It's very complicated on one hand, and it's very simple on the other hand. And those who say that is impossible, and again, I find myself agreeing with Cenk, it is possible. But many things must change. Very, very, very basic things. And above all, there is no symmetria. The change must start and come mainly from Israel. Because Israel is the strong one, Israel is the occupier, and Israel has to change itself. That's not enough, but that's the core issue.
I think that's really changes really complicated on one hand, or is the situation really complicated on one hand, very simple on the other hand. It's really good. Well, thank you all for joining. I think it was an interesting conversation.
Can I add one more final thing? I'll agree with Cenk too. The change is not complicated. It's painful. That's the issue. I don't know if Cenk realizes it, but what he said earlier about Palestinians giving up the right of return, that is a painful concession. That has to be matched on the Israeli side with a painful concession, like a big withdrawal from the West Bank, like 500,000 settlers gone or part of the new Palestinian state. So if one side is willing to make a painful concession, then the other side should be. And I think that's the big issue. It's not that it's complicated. It's that people don't have things they want to give up that are very painful to give up. Yeah.
That's
amazing. I think we all
totally
agree
at
this.
The end.
Yeah,
I'm happy we're finishing on an agreement.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.